Hello there. My name is Henrik, and glad you can join us live. This is the last day of a 10-day series where I have been teaching about programming. So today's the last day I'll be teaching. I will be making weekly content, but for this series, this is the last day. And then in this video, I'm going to be talking about the essential skill that every programmer must have. So, the essential skill that every programmer must have. There's a lot of skills out there that programmers should have. But I think when I had to think about what is the essential skill, this is what I came up with. And if you're learning how to program, I have this guide called my Personalized Finance App Programming Guide. It will teach you to go from no coding experience to building your first app. And basically what you do in this application is you take your credit card transactions and then you categorize them in different budget categories. So it's a personalized finance app. Now lets you personalize your finances. And if you don't have a credit card, you can use my sample file. I have a sample file in the guide itself. So you can still use this as a fun programming project that you can do. All right, so the link is in the description. And if you download it, pay attention to what it says, and you do what it says, then you will definitely learn some fundamental programming concepts. Also, before we begin the talk for today, I will say that I plan to open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them at the end. And hope this is helpful, okay? All right, so let's begin. So the essential skill every programmer must have. And there's a lot of debate about what's the essential skill every programmer must have. But in my experience, the essential skill every programmer must have is self-learning. So I kind of alluded to this in a previous video, but self-learning is so key as a programmer because there's so many things out there in the world and there's so many developments in our world. For example, ChatGPT and AI. And even I think about my old coworkers who were coding in the 80s and 70s. And then they told me how things have changed so much since then. And even my coworkers who are retiring right now, they told me that the way that they would program in the 90s is very different now than it was back then. So they're always changing and adapting, and they have to self-learn these new technologies. They have to self-learn all these advancements, even in hardware. To keep up with the hardware, to keep up with these advancements, they had to adapt, and they had to self-learn. They had to pick up new things. Things that they learned in college became outdated. That's what they would always tell me. And likewise, for me, things that I learned in college. Actually, I don't think the things I learned in college are outdated yet, but the idea here is technology is progressing really fast and you have to adapt, you have to self-learn. And there are a lot of things out there that in the coding world, there's so many different tools that people have, so many different libraries people are creating, so many different programming languages that people are creating. And if you want to use them, you have to self-learn, you have to pick it up. And like one of my friends, he told me he self-learned Java, and now he's a JavaScript. Oh no, it was Java. He said he's a self-learned Java developer, and that's his job now. So he self-learned that. So as you grow in your career, you're not gonna know where exactly your career is gonna take you, but you're gonna have to self-learn to get into the field that you're going to be going into, the field that you're being called to. Then you have to self-learn, basically. And this is kind of like a cop-out answer because it's kind of like that like if you had 3 wishes, there's this cop-out where you wish for the things you want in the first 2, and then the last one you wish for more wishes. So self-learning is kind of like that. Self-learning is you can pick up, it's a skill that allows you to pick up new skills. You see what I'm saying? So I think this is the essential programming skill. And this was one of the hallmarks of my programming career. When I went into my job, I didn't know a lot of programming language. I only knew C, and I knew how to code in MATLAB. But I didn't know Python, I didn't know C++, I didn't know Java. But in my job, they told me, I need you to do this. I need you to learn this. I need you to program this. And it's okay. It's in Python. It's in C++. It's in Java. It's all right. Just try to do what you can. And I had to I'll self-learn it. All right. So with that said, the next thing I want to talk about is where did in my programming journey, what was the best websites I used to code? What are the best resources that I used? So when I was working in my job, the best resources or best websites were Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow. I didn't use Reddit. I didn't start using Reddit until maybe last year. So in my job, those were the main two. And I had miscellaneous forums. There were miscellaneous forums for different hardware and different kinds of libraries. So in my job, when I would be confused about, I was thinking, how do I implement this? Or there's not much information out there. I would have to go in these miscellaneous forums. And there's always, whenever you have an error in your code, you can always search it up on Google. And there's always at least one person there who can explain something to you. And there's always going to be one person there who explains why you're getting the error that you're getting. So the main ways I learned was just from Googling, and Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow were one of the main ones that would come up in my Google search, and they helped me a lot. They helped me learn Linux too, and whenever I had problems with Linux, I found solutions there. And whenever I had to code something, like I mentioned yesterday, one of the libraries I used was Plotly with Python. It's a graphing library, and I learned that from a website as well. And so these are very these websites and the internet is a very useful tool for self-learning. Obviously, you're watching this video, so there's a lot you can learn online. And I also want to point out that Reddit and Quora are also good places for general questions about programming. So I started going there just to see what people are saying about programming, and I think they actually give good advice. And I also try to pitch in some of my experience, my thoughts, whenever people have questions. So Reddit, actually, I still learn a lot from reading people's questions on Reddit and also reading in Quora. So those are good places too. But I will say this is you should also be careful of the things that you're reading on there, because sometimes there's programmers there who try to give you advice, but they kind of lead you in the wrong direction. I think personally they lead you in the wrong direction, and I hope I'm not one of those guys. But when I read them, sometimes they make programming to sound so complicated. Like you have to have like they would say these very abstract, like high level mindset things that you need to do in order to be a programmer. And I think for me, they're just making it overly complicated, and it kind of discourages people from becoming programmers. So I think just be careful of what you read on those websites. All right. And also, I will say YouTube is also another good resource. So when I was learning for my Android app, for my Android apps for my work, I was also doing some Android apps for some of the projects at my work. And the way I learned, I did a lot of searching on YouTube, and then they taught me a lot about how to use different libraries. And so I learned a lot about Android applications from YouTube tutorials. So those are good places where I learned as well. And also, I mentioned yesterday, I got into no-code tools like AppGyver and Bubble.io and Firebase. I used Firebase, Google Firebase. So I learned a lot from just watching tutorials. And then from watching those tutorials, I was able to build my own applications. And from those applications, I started to understand the system better and started to understand how things work. And then gives me a better grasp of the programming tools that are available. And then I was able to build more applications for myself. And also, I think there's something nice about having a YouTube tutorial, because you get to you don't get to interact, but you get to see a human explain things through video. Maybe you don't like videos because they take too long to listen to, and you'd rather just read. I'm like that too. I'd rather just actually when I look on Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow, I see the question, my question. I don't even read the full question of the person. I just go straight to the answer, and then just see what is the right what is the right command I need to type in to fix my problem. But anyways, yeah, YouTube is nice because it helps you. It's just nice to have a human go through and explain things to you, kind of like in person. So I think those are really helpful too. So I also learned from. So basically, in summary, I learned from Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow, miscellaneous forums, and YouTube. So those are really good resources, and there's a lot you can learn on YouTube. I'm here on YouTube to help you to learn more about programming and how to program. Hopefully, I'll be putting out more tutorials later on this year. And lastly, I'll close with this one discussion I saw on Reddit. It's someone was asking about when you should read documentation, or as a software engineer, how often, or a programmer, how often do you read documentation? And when it comes to self-learning, I think documentation is one of my last resorts. I only go there when I get really, really stuck. And I think a good example or a good analogy of this is like an instruction manual. When you get your furniture from IKEA, sometimes it's just intuitive how to assemble your furniture, right? And so you don't need the instruction manual. But if you get stuck and you have no clue what something is, then you consult the instruction manual. So that's how I look at documentation for code, for libraries and stuff like that. If I'm coding something and I get really stuck and I don't know, I get really stuck, then I go and consult the documentation. And I actually learn best through examples. So I usually go through example code first, and then I see how in the example how the function is used, or how the method is used, or how the library is used, and then I try to make my program copy what the example code is doing. But sometimes the example code that is provided is not covering my use case. So then that's when I would go into the documentation. I would look into it and see, try to understand the function more, when it's used, why it's used, and also like what are the arguments that are passed into it, what kind of data types are used for the input arguments and the output arguments. So that's when I would consult the documentation. So I kind of look at it last. It's only when I'm stuck and I have an idea of what I'm going to search up. When you learn things in life, you don't read the encyclopedia and you just read it from top to bottom, right? You find like your general understanding, and then when you get stuck or you want to have something specific, then you go into the encyclopedia and look for something specific. So that when you have something specific, that's when you go into the documentation. All right. And also over time, you'll start to develop a good intuition on when to go to documentation. All right. So that's my talk for today. I want to keep it short. And so, yeah, the essential skill for every programmer is self-learning. And then the best websites I used to code were Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange, Google, miscellaneous forums, YouTube. And the last thing is go to documentation. When you're self-learning, go to documentation, kind of like a last resort. Try to find better, more simpler ways of learning how to do what you're trying to do. All right? All right, so now I can open up for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat, or if you're watching this on replay, you can also leave it in the comment section. So I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. What are you self-learning right now? What are you practicing? How are you practicing this essential skill of self-learning? Where are you self-learning, and why are you self-learning it? What are some of your goals in learning how to code? I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. And also, what are some websites and resources that you guys are learning how to code? I'd love to hear more about that. And my journey is different, but I would also like to hear what is your guys' journey on how you're self-learning how to code. And also another thing I want to ask too for you guys is I would also like to hear what are some essential skills that do you think I missed? What is an essential programming skill that you think I missed? All right. So yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. Like I said before in the beginning of the live, if you haven't downloaded it already, I have a free programming guide called my Personalized Finance App Programming Guide. It's a 12-step guide. It'll teach you how to go from no coding experience to building your first app for your finances. And yeah, it's in the link in the description. And hopefully it's a good project for you. When I was in university learning projects, those were the best ways I got a handle on my programming language. I learned in C, and one of the best ways I learned in C was when I got those projects. Also in work, when I got a task, that's how I got better at programming. So I hope this would be a good project for you. All right, so if that's it, thank you all for watching. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. I hope it's helpful for you, and I hope that you are self-learning and you keep working at self-learning and don't get tired and don't get burned out. Keep going and you'll see some fruit. You'll see some results. And yeah.